Hi folks. Well, today I would like to talk about how the language in which one speaks in can affect how one is perceived by the people around them. So language in essential was developed by humans as a tool for survival, you could say, which helped humans to surpass any other species, and it gave them complex communication, which in turn helped them develop technology, science, history, literature. Now, language is what helps one communicate with each other. It helps to let others know what you need or what you want. It helps in your survival. Now, there is no hard and fast rule about how a language is spoken. Well, let's take, and language is constantly developing and changing depending on usage. And well, the basic intention behind the use of language is communication, right? So that one person can understand the other. And that is also why some rules are established surrounding the language used, so that it is constant across communities, so that it can help in communication. However, we still find variations, like for example, if you were to learn English from Snoop Dogg by hanging out with him, compared to the English you learned from Stephen Fry from accompanying him, would be worlds apart. Though these two people do very well in their niches, and they do a good job in getting their points across. And both of them have their own utility, right? And so the way people perceive these two individuals, though not very different, well, both of them are human beings, but the way they are perceived is different because of the way in which they use language. And keep in mind that it is the same language here, which will help emphasize the point that I am going to make next. So if there is so much variability in while speaking the same language, there must be a greater variability while speaking in two different languages. Now let's take the example of English and Hindi, let's say. So the way one expresses themselves in English would be much different than the way one expresses themselves in Hindi. Well, first of all, these two languages have completely different vocabulary, the words are different, the sounds are different, and the sentence structures are, well, obviously different. And also, the environment in which one was taught language A, in this case Hindi, is much different than the language one learnt in a different environment, and that is language B. Well, language A might have been learned in your home or in your native area or in the community in which this language was constantly spoken in. And this language in this case has the utility of promoting community bonding and fostering relationships based on cooperation. Whereas if you take language B, for example, in this case, which is, well, utilized in a completely different environment or context for a very different purpose, like lecturing at a university or delivering news or having a debate or conveying information, or whatever utility this language B has in this case. Now this is just one nuance of the whole thing. Also, the words that one uses in language A, even though it has the same meaning as that of language B, the significance of the same word, even though they mean the same thing, may be completely different. The significance of that idea may be completely different in these two communities, you could say. Well, I have not completely developed this idea, so it may sound a little abstract, but I know I'm getting at something here, and I'm sure there is something to look into. Well, to make this point clearer, let's take the example of, well, let's say you have a Korean friend and the two of you are watching a Korean movie together and you don't understand Korean, but fortunately there are English subtitles that you can read and so that you can follow the plot along. And then your friend says that, you know, you are not completely understanding this movie because the English is not conveying properly what is actually being shown. And so this claim that the meaning has been lost in translation does hold a lot of validity, I'd say, because it is something that people do experience, because they might not be able to explain a concept properly in another excellent example of this is idioms that you might use in your native language but find it very difficult to translate it to a different language, and the meaning is completely lost in translation. So, as you can see, the point I was trying to make is the way one person expresses themselves in language A might be or is different from the way in which a person expresses themselves in language B. Well, from my observation, I have noticed people who are completely comfortable using two different languages in the same sentence do a much better job of explaining themselves more fully. Now, this is something very important to look at, because they are taking ideas from two different places and combining them to express themselves much better. Well, this in turn gives them more fluidity in enabling them to convey their ideas in a more solid manner, because it conveys what could not be conveyed if you used just one language. And so I'm sure that there is a lot of utility in being able to express yourself by using both languages at the same time. Of course, the downside of this is that the other person has to be knowledgeable in both of these languages, language A as well as language B. Because then the other person would not understand what you are saying. But if the other person is high on the openness scale, then perhaps you could get away with it. But you would have to take some time to explain what that phrase you used in the other language meant, so that your meaning is conveyed. Well, I have this friend who used to use the words from a completely different language, and well, I had no idea what he was talking about. And so I used to ask him to explain it to me. And so he used to use one word and then take one whole minute to explain it to me what it meant in English. So, well, if you're a little patient, well, it's a pretty interesting way to communicate, and it does broaden your horizons as well. It expands your thinking capability, and I would say that this is an extremely important thing to have, because the world is constantly communicating with each other, and we are becoming a multicultural society. So, and it's very easy to communicate with one person from this corner of the world to a completely different corner of the world. So giving this kind of freedom and not being restricted to just one language could allow for a much better personality integration making you a more well-rounded individual. It gives you more flavor. It makes you more interesting. Though of course you must carry it out with a certain amount of confidence. You must use it because you want to, not because the circumstance is forcing you. And there is a lot of difference in that. So, well, in the end, whatever helps you communicate better.